one with my name on it, opened it, and I had a note from my mom that the camera that I was asking for was being delayed and that it'd be a couple weeks late, which I completely just accepted because my mom never lied to me. What I found out later was my parents were in a dispute with the IRS. And a couple of weeks before Christmas, the IRS went into our Christmas club and took all the money, drove it to zero. So this was a very embarrassing time for my parents because they had no money to buy Christmas presents and pretend to be Santa Claus. Only someone who's a gutless puke would do something like that. So my dad was in a dispute with the IRS. Where's a guy with a family of 10 going to go and sneak and be away from the IRS with all the investigative abilities? They just want to be the bully that they are. So it motivated me to try to, as I got older in life, to do something about taxing agencies. And I didn't know exactly what that would be until I got the idea to be involved with the aviation industry, which is where I started Aero and Marine. So that's the reason why white envelopes in a Christmas tree instead of presents under the tree. Go ahead and sell them. Here's what we're known for. You want me to read these lists? Now that'd get boring. We do California use tax exemptions, planning and qualifications, audit defense and CDTFA representation, pre-purchase and post-purchase purchase tax risk assessments, and clear rule-based guidance, no guessworks, no assumptions. Like I said, we've done over 2,500 of these cases and not one of our clients has ever paid a dime in tax. Go ahead. What you don't know is the Supreme Court has proclaimed that every citizen of the United States has a right as well as an obligation to avoid taxes. The interpretation of that is you're not being a good citizen if you are not taking responsibility for mitigating your taxes as much as possible. The statement by a federal appellate judge, Leonard Hand, really lays it all out. Anyone may arrange his affairs so that his taxes shall be as low as possible. He is not bound to choose that pattern which best pays the Treasury. There is not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes. You can volunteer, but there's not a patriotic duty. Over and over again, the courts have said that there is nothing sinister in so arranging affairs as to keep taxes as low as possible. Everyone does it, rich and poor alike, and all do it right, for nobody owes any public duty to pay more than the law demands. Go ahead, Sella. What you probably don't realize is that court decision was rendered in 1934. So whenever you hear socialist politicians talking about fair share, they're lying to you, or they're an idiot. So just understand that even though the Supreme Court has made a decision that favors all taxpayers, many politicians choose to ignore it. Go ahead, Michelle. What's the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance? Evasion is illegal. That's the illegal non-payment of or underpayment of tax. And avoidance is legal, the arrangements of one financial affairs so as to minimize tax liabilities within the law. Remember the debates between Hillary and Trump, where she was accusing him of using some write-off? And he said, of course I did it. And so do all of her donors. Everyone who has amassed any wealth in this country probably uses tax avoidance programs. Go ahead, Sella. So there you are. You're thinking about buying an aircraft, a boat, or a vehicle, and you have absolutely no idea of how to exactly do it. That's what this video is for. It's going to explain to you where you're at in the information gathering phase and then how to be successful once you get us hired. When you are looking for information, in other words, you're in the buying stage, you're getting ready to buy an airplane, and you're trying to decide, how do I handle the sales tax problem? It's kind of like standing in the middle of a freeway and having cars drive by you at 70 to 80, or if you're in California at 100 miles an hour, and it's lack of order, it's constant confusion. So what I want to provide for you is I want to take one of those cars that's driving by you at 100 miles an hour and grab it and slow it down for you. What that creates for you is a stable datum, so you can start to process your way through all of the things that you're going to need to know in this process, because there's lots of things that you need to know. Some of them you get from us, some of you get from your aviation attorney. You might have to deal with property taxes, you might have to deal with your CPA. But that is the process that you go through. You start out in a little bit of confusion because you don't know how to do the sales tax thing, and that is what we can do for you to slow down that bit of confusion. But there's two definitions of order. The second definition is an order when you're giving orders to someone. If you want to be really, really successful with our program, you have to be willing to accept orders from us, because if you hire us before you take possession and then follow all of our instructions or orders, you cannot fail. Why do I say that? Because we never have. So just be willing to let us create the situation where there's some order in your confusion, and then also be willing to take our orders, and we guarantee how things are going to work out for you. So I've written an article called "Misunderstanding Could Cost You Thousands." The reason I wrote that article is because they can apply a fraud penalty to you, which increases the amount of tax by 50% of any tax determined to be due on the sales price of the vehicle, vessel, or aircraft. And the thing from the state's point of view that they like about this thing is that if they decide to charge you with fraud, there's no statute of limitations for how long they can take to discover you, charge you, and find you guilty. Go ahead, Selim. The reason most owners get it wrong is they get their tax information from their fellow pilots, relying on assumptions instead of what it says in the law, confusing intent with execution, and following advice that ignores California-specific rules. And as we go forward, you can see how much trouble this can be for you. Go ahead. When certain of the exemptions that we're going to go through, it's really important to understand how California decides whether you are a resident or a non-resident. Typically, if you hire an out of California CPA, he's going to apply the definition from a federal income tax return, or a federal idea relative to income tax. California does not use that definition. Here's where you really want to pay attention. It says the aircraft was purchased by a California resident, and it says as defined in section 516 of the California Penal Code. Or if the aircraft was subject to property tax in California during the first 12 months of ownership. Or it's used or stored or registered in California. It uses all of those. Remember that California is a very tax-hungry state because they're overspending. They're billions with a B in arrears, in debt. So be very wary of it. Go ahead, Selim. In order to understand this, you need to shift your viewpoint to learn this lesson, because if I just give you all these little sections out of the penal code, out of the DMV code, you're going to defend yourself doesn't apply to me, that doesn't apply to me, that doesn't apply to me. So I want you to shift your viewpoint and decide that for the next few minutes, you are gone to work for the state of California. You're in the consumer use tax section of the CDTFA, which is the piece of people responsible for determining whether you qualify for an exemption or not. Shift your attention to how you can use each of these little sections to determine that the taxpayer owes the tax. Please, if you don't put that hat on, you're not thinking that way, you're going to automatically defend yourself and say, well, that doesn't apply to me. And that's not what I want you to do. So go ahead, Sella. The following are evidence of residency for purposes of vehicle registration. Address where you're registered to vote. Without getting off on the political tangent that I'd like to waste all of everybody's time to today, I won't talk about that other than the fact that there's an awful lot of people who are registered to vote in California. And you may be by accident because someone has determined to use your name or address to vote because they wanted their candidate to win. Location of employment or business of place of business. Decide that you're a resident of Ohio, that you've been sent to California to conduct an audit of some businesses. Where's your location of employment? Where is it? Remember, you're assuming that you want to use these A through I as ways to create a tax liability. Don't defend yourself because you won't get the point of this exercise. C, payment of resident tuition at a public institution of higher education. I had a daughter who was graduating from high school and was looking for colleges to attend. And because you know that all high school kids want to get far, far, far away from their parents so they could break all the rules, she was looking at colleges on the East Coast. I discovered that while she was doing, I at that time, my mindset was that a resident is clear and a non-resident is clear. What I discovered was there were some websites that allowed kids from various different states to trade their residence status. So be very wary of what you think that says and how it can apply against you. D, attendance of dependents at primary or secondary school. Let's go back to you being the same resident of Ohio. You're married, you have children, you later get a divorce, your wife moves to California, and you have primary school or secondary school kids going to school in California. That, for the purposes of the section relative to aircraft, vessels, and vehicles, makes you a California resident. Whether your out-of-state CPA thinks it or not, it doesn't matter. It only matters what the state of California thinks. Little e, filing a homeowner's property tax exemption. I discovered as I acquired more and more clients out of the Northwest that many people who live in an area of the United States that seldom sees sunshine, they also have secondary homes in Southern California, like Palm Springs or someplace out in the desert. Their California CPA files the property tax exemption for them, deciding that they're trying to save them money. This makes them a California resident for the purpose of aircraft, vessel, or vehicle exemptions. Little f, renting or leasing a home for use as a residence. So let's go back to the location of employment, or maybe even better, let's just decide that you're doing well enough that you want to bring your whole family for the summer out to California and spend several weeks renting a hotel, going to all the amusement parks in Southern California. Aren't you renting or leasing a home for use as a resident? Stay with me. Always assume that you're trying to use these little small letter parts of the DMV code to use as weapons against purchasers of aircraft, vessels, and vehicles. G, declaration of residency to obtain a license or any other or benefit not extended, to be a resident. I think you would know about this, but I'm surprised every day that I'm in this state. H, possession of a California's driver's license. California can force you to get a California's driver's license if you spend enough time in California. So be very aware of what the DMV code says about that. Now look at little I. Other acts, occurrences, or events that indicate presence in the state is more than temporary or transient. This is a quiz for all of you on this webinar. How would you use that little I? Unmute yourself and just holler out what you think. How would you use it? Come on, don't be afraid to speak up. I know there's a lot of people on here. For those of you who are on the live stream, type it in and get it to Marcella. Marcella, has anybody responded?
There is no responses on any of the live streams yet.
So Roger says tie downs and hangers. True, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. The answer is, if I'm the brand new employee of the state of California and I want to be a hero and I want to get promoted because I'm collecting a lot of tax, I'll use it any way I want. So this shifts the ability to the auditor that they can make up anything they want, how they've interpreted something that's in your documentation. The thing to remember is that the taxpayer is not the one who gets to decide whether he or she is an out-of-state resident. The decision is always finally with the state of California. Go ahead, Sally. Aircraft, vessels, and luxury vehicles are flagged because high dollar values, cross-state and international movement, frequent use in California, inconsistent reporting across agencies. Audits often begins years after purchase. The state is under no obligation to keep any timeliness about when they audit your purchase. It's to their advantage because they get to charge you interest. So there's the why behind they're not in any hurry. Go ahead, Sal. This plot, the three most common exemptions are interstate commerce flight hours exemption, which is limited to aircraft only. There is an interstate commerce exemption available for vessels, and which is never, I mean, like 1 out of 1,000 used. And then there's the interstate commerce miles traveled for vehicles used. Principal use test exemption is the one that we use primarily for vessels, and the common carrier exemption, which only available to aircraft owners. And we're going to talk about all of those. And again, please, if you have any questions, because we're going through this pretty rapidly, please make sure that you unmute yourself and ask the question, or at least send it in to Marcella. Go ahead and change the page. Let's talk about the interstate commerce flight hours exemption. First step is you must take possession outside of California. And for the purpose of the example, let's say that you take possession in Montana, because that's a no sales tax state. No longer can anyone go to Oregon, and take possession of an aircraft, because Florida has instituted a specialized tax for any property over $1 million. So we generally, if you're buying a jet or an expensive high performance aircraft, the purchase price is over $1 million. Well, if you're on the West Coast, you should take possession in Montana. Then from that state, you must fly from Billings, Montana, just so we can use cities to make this make sense. You must fly to another state, but not yet into California, and conduct business at that other state's location. The third step is you enter California. The test period does not begin until your first flight. No, it starts the day that you land in California, and it's based on flight hours only. You start a 6-month-long test. During the 6 months, 100% of the flight hours on that aircraft are the basis for the test. You start accumulating hours with the first flight out of the place that you landed. Let's just say it was Reno, Nevada for business. 60% of those total flight hours must be for interstate business use. Therefore, the other 40%, you can do anything that you want. It's important that you understand that you get credit for the whole round trip, provided that you don't stay at that location for too long, where the state will attempt to take away that your return flight because you stayed too long, and they'll say that you did that for personal reasons. So they'll consider it a personal trip. So be very careful. Okay. Any flight hours used for training or any intrastate flights, meaning flights inside of California, maintenance or personal flights, are all pushed into that 40% area. That's the total amount. Commercial use is defined as flight hours must be for business purpose. They can be 100% Part 91 hours or a combination of 91 and 135. And up until very recently, these included flights for charity. And now, even though it's written right into the law, the regulation, excuse me, that flights for non-profit or for on behalf of a 501c3 count, the state has decided in its infinite wisdom and its voracious appetite for taxes that they're not recognizing that, and we're fighting it as hard as we can. Go ahead, Sal. Is there any questions on that particular interstate commerce flight hours test? Any questions at all? Sorry, I forgot to ask Marcella.
There are not any in any of our live stream chats right now.
Okay. The principal use test has 2 basic steps. The first step, again, is taking possession outside of California. And through documentation, you have to support that for the purpose of this, the vessel or vehicle or aircraft never entered California at any time during the first 12 months. So as you can see, the test period is twice as long, and the documentation is very laborious to support the fact that you're trying to prove a negative. You have to support the fact that it never entered California. And everything in all these tests is about documentation. It's documents, documents, documents. That's why when you hire us, we put you on a follow-up system every month during the test period. So we're quality controlling. Mike, I'll get to you in a second. We're quality controlling everything that you're doing and making sure that you understand that. Marcella, can you read what Mike's question was?
Mike's question is, if your business flight starts in California and includes a refueling stop in California before leaving the state, how are the flight hours of that trip counted?
It's a great question. Only for refueling flights, only time that you can discount the fact that you went to California and you claimed it as refueling is if the fuel capacity of your aircraft, as listed on the manufacturer's website, shows that that's how farther you could go. So if you're using a really small fuel tank, you can get away with it. But primarily, we do not suggest it. Do not ever give the state an opportunity to discount some of your flight hours. And we always raise the minimum bar to going back to the interstate commerce test. Instead of 60%, we always raise it to 60%, even the law says 50%. And we do that to create a margin of error. Everything is about documentation. You hire us, you'll get connected to Julie, who runs all of our consultants and oversees everything and stays in constant communication with you because she's doing your follow-up with you on a monthly basis. She also gives you her cell number so that if you're getting ready to make a flight and you had a question like you did, like Mike had, you can ask before you do the flight. She'll tell you exactly what to do. So we're really on your side. We do not unjustly enrich the state of California because they don't need any more money. They don't know how to control the spending. So the principal use test also works on vessels, on vehicles. So if you take possession of it outside the state, and be very careful about buying from an in-state retailer and taking the delivery in Nevada, because I have a legal opinion from them that if a California retailer constantly delivers, let's say it goes from Sacramento to Reno to deliver their vehicles outside the state, they are still subject, and it becomes a sales tax transaction to them because you've become a retailer in Nevada. So you've got to be careful about that. And again, Julie will go over with this as she trains you how to support your claims with the documentation. Is there any questions about the principal use test? I seldom use it for vessels. Excuse me. I always use it for vessels. I've never used it for the interstate commerce, even though there is a section in the law that allows you to do that. And I use it for motorhomes a lot.
I have a question from one of the live streams wanting to know how documentation would work for an aircraft using principal use.
It's part of our secret sauce, but Julie will train you on that after you hire us. I promise you. We've done several of these and it can be done. It's a little bit more difficult, but that's why we have the best in the state controlling all of our flows with our consultants and our clients. She knows that stuff inside and out. And she's also aware when the state starts doing something that violates their own laws and regulations, and she makes you very aware of it. So you'll love Julie. She's a mom. She practices with the soft touch. The only time you get a hard touch from her is when you start to ignore the responsibilities that you did in the contract of keeping us up to date on everything that you're doing. I hope that answers your question. Okay, move on. Now, the common carrier test only applies to aircraft. You can take possession anywhere. You must consider the tax implications of the other states. Julie will go once you decide where you want to take possession, she'll research the other states and make sure that you can do that. You start accumulating the flight hours for the test on first operational use. And this test starts the first time the wheels go up, the first time you leave the ground, and continues for 12 months. Again, we're raising the bar to 60% of the aircraft time must be flown in common carriage. The state defines a common carrier flight as a flight that is flown under Part 135 regulations that carries passengers or cargo. And it states clearly that deadhead or reposition flights that are billed to customers do not count. So you have to be aware of that. There was a time, 15, 20 years ago, that there was someone at the board that allowed that to happen, and it's no longer allowed to work anyway. So you've got to be actually flying as a Part 135 flight. You'll always notice that with the exception of the principal use test, we extend on our minds the threshold of whether it's taxable or not because we want to create a margin of error. The reason, especially with aircraft, why we want to create a margin of error is we know that as pilots, you're used to pushing the envelope. You're always, if we tell you 50%, you're going to try to bring it in at 51% or 50.8%. And I can guarantee you that if you bring an exemption in at that low of a number, that the auditors are going to start wringing their hands and they're going to try to throw out enough flights to make your event taxable. That's why the contract between us and you is set at 60%, because we want to create a margin of error that overcomes their natural laziness or their natural aggressiveness. So are there any questions about the common carrier test and how it applies?
Somebody put in our chat saying that they noticed that we're able to take possession in California for common carrier. Is this the only exemption?
This is the only exemption, and even if you do the common carrier exemption, you're going to go through this with Julie. She's going to recommend that you start it outside of the state, and we create a dual track contract for you. We started outside of the state so we can potentially look at using the flights in common carrier as documentation to support the interstate commerce flight test. And then it'll shorten your test period to 6 months instead of 12 months, which you'll really like. It'll save you money too. Let's say that you were buying a $2 million aircraft, and our fee for that would be 1% of the purchase price, or $20,000. And if you decide to use the common carrier, we automatically add $5,000 to it because it doubles the test period. So it'll save you money, it'll save you time, and Julie is going to be wonderful at helping you make that all work, because all of your interstate common carrier flights are documentation to support an interstate flight for a business purpose. Does that answer the question? Thanks. Go ahead, Stella. Right now, the city TFA is extremely short-staffed, causing the new two-part review to take exponentially longer than usual. We follow up with them monthly for however long it takes until you receive your exemption. But by rule, which is the administrative procedures, we are not allowed to follow up with the CDTFA, which stands for the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, until 90 days after we first file it with them. So it gets quiet for a little while, and then the CDTFA starts claiming that they're short-staffed, so they can't do that. I don't want to say that they're not telling the truth, but I also have a suspicion that the longer they leave your request for supporting an exemption, they can claim the tax revenue to help balance their budget. That's just my thoughts. That's what I would do if I was them, being someone who would only interested in gaining more tax revenue as opposed to making sure that the right amount of tax is collected. And then the other thing is, depending on whose desk it lands on, then their interpretation of the law could be different. One person could review a tax return in a few months, whereas another could take 6 months or 12 months, or we have some now that are sitting 18 months. So just be aware of that, that once your test period ends, it'll feel to you like the CDTFA is slow walking stuff. But the good news is, once your test period is over, you can use your aircraft, vessel, or vehicle in any manner that you want, because the CDTFA is the one that decided how long the test periods are. And once the test period is over, they don't have any access to your information. So just be well aware of that as we go forward in time. Go ahead, Marcella. So if you've already purchased by the time that you hear about us, call us today. We can, by reviewing your documents and quality controlling them, if you haven't submitted anything to the board, and sometimes if you have submitted stuff to the state of California, we can help you. So get your pens ready or be ready to screenshot. The next slide is all the contact information you'll need to legally avoid California sales and use tax. There's our address. There's our phone number. There's the email address of me. Julie handles all of our consulting. And there's Marcella, who handles all of our everything else. She does everything else here. She'll tell you that. And there's our website. Please take a photo of that, a screenshot, or write it all down. We'll leave it up for you. Is there any other questions from anyone in the audience, including the live audience, who can't unmute and just ask us a question?
I was curious. I am licensed in the state of California as an insurance broker. Does that make me a qualified resident?
Because I never trust the state of California, my answer will be probably. Just you remember that, like I said, it requires that viewpoint shift about how someone would use that as a weapon against you. Remember little I, any other activity. So I would say yes, they might. Asking me what someone at the Board of Equalization can do, all I can give you is my opinion, because I'm not that person. But be very wary of that. It's a great question, Clyde.
Well, I do know that I got an awful lot of campaign information and the only way they had my address or could have was through the license bureau. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, and I'll say this because I want to. They're trying to collect out-of-state addresses, because then they can vote using your name and might not be detected. Just remember that.
Wow. But I can't vote there because I'm not registered, right?
Yeah, well, I'm political. Michael, I didn't get to see all of your questions.
I have the question for you from Michael. It's, does the first contact with the BOE, which is now the CDTFA, start with them notifying the owner or with the owner filing?
Depends. That sounds like a lawyer's. Remember that they are under no obligation to notify you timely. So if they wait, they can potentially collect not more tax, but penalties and interest. So it's to their advantage to wait a little while. There's no obligation, because they've already published the laws and regulations and they're available publicly. So that's all the farther they have to go. Does that answer your question, Mike? Did he respond, Stella?
Oh, no response.
Okay. Well, ask me specifically where I created the confusion for you, Mike. Mike, you can just call me at the calls.
He said come back to
Okay.
him in a minute. He's typing out his response.
Mike, just call me after this. You've got my phone number. We've talked in the past, so I know that we've talked before. Love your beard. So Marcella, tell everyone what this is all about.
So this is for staying to the end of our webinar and learning all of the information about how to legally avoid California sales tax. We're giving our book that we normally sell for $99.99 for free to all attendees. That's through our live stream and here as well. In here is going to be a book that you can download and be able to reference with some of the steps of how to legally avoid sales tax that we went over today. And then if you have any questions, Tom will also follow up with you after you download your book just to make sure that everything made sense and go through next steps.
So just take a picture of that URL. That was a question, Marcella.
You're going to take a picture of the QR code. Once you take a picture of the QR code, you can hold it down and it'll scan it and send it to our website, which is where you will request your copy. If you have any difficulties in doing so, please just shoot me an email, marcella@arrowmarinetaxpros.com, or give us a call and I'll walk you through that over the phone or through email.
Okay. Are we done then, Sal?
Yes, sir. No more questions in any of our live streams either.
So anyone, including the
Oop, we have another question real quick.
when a determination is made that no property tax is as it is part of the requirement. No, the questions about property tax do not cross over into use tax. Property tax is administered by the counties independently. And I don't know how you got the idea that if it's subject to property tax, if it is subject to property tax, that was a separate issue. So if it's subject to property tax, then you're considered a California resident. Doesn't mean you can't claim the exemption. It just means you have to do all of the normal things that we require of you and duly and legally and through documentation support the claim for exemption, which Julie will do a wonderful job of helping you do. All you got to do is follow her instructions. Okay. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate all of you tremendously. And we're done for the day.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye.